Welcome to the Hembury Books podcast. Today we have Will Yeoman, who is CEO of Writing WA, Western Australia's peak body for the writing sector. An experienced journalist, Will has been a contributor to the West Australian for nearly 20 years, as well as a music critic for Gramophone and Limelight magazines. His short memoir, Holy Family, was recently published as part of the Night Parrot Press anthology, Our Selves, 100 Micro Memoirs. Will is also Artistic Director of Perth Festival Writers Weekend and York Regional Writers Festival. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Will.
Thank you, Jessica. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I would love to hear about your role as CEO of Writing WA.
Yeah, absolutely. So Writing WA, some people may be aware that each state has its own writers' centre, New South Wales, Victoria and so forth. So we're equivalent to those in as much as we look after the whole writing sector of the state. And that means not just writers, but the publishers, the bookstores, the editors, we're really across everything. And it's all about trying to strengthen and support the writing sector and create a vibrant local writing sector that is supportive of all those wonderful writers and illustrators and poets out there. So that's really our chief role, and we're primarily funded by the government, and we source additional funding from private donors as well. So that's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
How long, just out of interest, have these state centres been around for in Australia?
Oh, they do vary. Some of them are as old as we're actually a bit different in Western Australia because we've got some smaller, more community-led writer centres as well, and some of those were set up like half a century ago. A lot of other ones, I would say, on average, around about 20 to 30 years, so that they're quite well established. So Writing WA has been around since the 90s. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And what are the kinds of, if there's a writer watching this, like I know I've attended freelancing courses, how to set up a freelancing business at Writers New South Wales, and there's memoir courses and things. What kinds of things have you got on?
Absolutely. Well, that's exactly what we try to do, both online and in person. Because we're based at the State Library of Western Australia, we have access to some, amazing venues, including theatres and seminar rooms and so forth. So we try to do a lot of our workshops here, and they will include a lot of professional development, like things about editing, improving your writing by learning from, for example, if you're like an early to mid-career writer, we try and arrange workshops with some of our top experienced authors, and so they can share their knowledge and their know-how. And they're always oversubscribed. They are just so popular. So we just try to cover the range. We even run courses on social media, marketing and so forth, because obviously that's an important part, especially nowadays, of any writer's journey. And lastly, I tried to do online courses. I just finished last night a 6-week course called Journalistic Techniques for Creative Writers. So I try to introduce, fiction writers primarily to concepts around non-fiction and journalistic techniques like, research, fact-finding, how to write in a factual way, all those kinds of things. And that was really good fun as well.
That sounds amazing. On the podcast yesterday, I interviewed Adam Courtney, who writes popular history books, and we talked about what devices you can take from fiction and apply to non-fiction to make it really dramatic and amazing. So there you go. We've got a lot to learn from each other, haven't we?
Absolutely. And you're right. You often see it that way around. People, particularly if you're writing history, they look at what fiction writers do and how you can learn to write those, those vivid creative scenes, particularly with dialogue as well. But it's less usual to go and look at what journalists do. I mean, I know that a lot of novelists end up coming from a journalist background. And I guess Ernest Hemingway is the most famous example of that.
Dalton in Australia. Trent Dalton.
Oh, Trent Dalton, huge example, of course. Thanks for reminding me, as if I needed reminding. So to think more about that, particularly in the area of how to write concisely and have an impact, you can learn so much, as you would know, being a former journalist as well. Particularly with news writing, you think about things like the lead, the hook, all those familiar, words to us, but a lot of people who maybe started in creative writing don't really understand those things.
Yeah, I'm so glad I did my accreditation as a newspaper journalist in London in 2009. And it was a really intense 6-month course by the National Council for the Training of Journalists. And I remain ever grateful that I had that really traditional training of shorthand, but also the news writing. Like, she used to fail us every week. But until we, had really mastered, the formula, I guess, of a good news story. And when I'm like writing blurbs for clients and stuff, I'm still like, what's the hook,
Absolutely. And I'm sure all of this training must have come in handy when you started writing your more long form material as well.
It did. It absolutely did. And I wanted to ask, we both have backgrounds in journalism. Why did the role of CEO of Writing WA appeal to you?
Look, I think it was an opportunity. I had always, I should point out that I've only been in the role for about a year and a half now, so it's very new. I had always worked, though, closely with Writing WA through their previous CEO and other people who worked here when I was at the newspaper. And I just love the idea of an organisation that was so supportive of the writing sector. And I did see an opportunity to, in a way, reinvent the organisation too, and create an organisation that was much more about community, much more outward facing, as they call it, much more communicative, and really also, most importantly for me, because I'm also an arts journalist, trying to see how writers and writing can integrate with and collaborate with artists from other art forms and genres, like the visual arts, music, dance. Because as you will know, Jessica, at the basis of almost every other art form is writing.
It is the essence of communication, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, it was your activeness on LinkedIn that is how I found you. And I think that's fantastic, because I'm not in Western Australia, but all the content is of interest. And it's that community building. And I think it's, fantastic. You're always posting interesting stuff.
No, thank you. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. These are basic principles. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. In fact, we're not just talking about Australia. This is all relevant. And I maintain quite close relationships with all the other writers' centres around Australia. And we have regular online catch-ups. And we are trying to work more closely together. So we are, in fact, thinking nationally as well, particularly when it comes to sourcing funding. We're even thinking about, okay, how can we do that as a community, as a group?
Is there a national equivalent of these state organisations?
There isn't yet. However, next year, as part of the Creative Australia initiatives, Writers Australia is going to kick off. So that's a national body that will support and encourage all of us as writers' centres, but also individuals throughout the entire country. And I believe it's quite a significant amount of significant funds have been put into this.
Creative Australia is amazing. I did a story for Forbes on Aussiewood. And so I looked at all the incentives the government provides to get movies made here, because during COVID, there was a real blossoming, people like us, apart from the distance, Australia's an amazing place to make movies. And I just thought, wow, these tax incentives are amazing. Imagine if we could do that. Well, I don't know, what would you do? Send a writer to Lizard Island or something? I don't know. Why has Australia been announced yet?
No, it's been mentioned in some of the previous media releases. Now, you'll forgive me I can't remember whether it's Writing Australia or Writers Australia. And in fact, that's because the actual name was sort of, up in the air for a little while.
Wow.
It was mentioned as part of the, the whole package when they started to talk about that. Of course, there was the First Nations area, then there was the film, a lot of those more traditional art forms as well, like the dance and theatre companies and so forth. Just about a month ago, I think, we saw Creative Futures Fund, which is a brand new fund which will support new and innovative ways of telling Australian stories. And they are welcoming literature as part of that. So they're thinking in a more integrated fashion as well. So look, it's very exciting news. It's amazing support from this current government, and I hope to see it continue and thrive.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, it is really interesting. One of the roles I've had for many years is like a cross-cultural trainer for artist relocations, and talk about culture a lot, and that Australia is kind of becoming more confident as a nation. We have a lot to be proud of, but for a long time there has been this kind of cultural cringe and the tall poppy syndrome where, you don't stand out, you don't speak up. Too much success is you've got tickets on yourself kind of thing. And I think, more telling of Australian stories would just be fantastic, but at the same time, not to become too insular, because sometimes I think we are quite insular. Do you know what I mean? And it can be hard to export what we create because it's so localized. So like a diverse number of voices, I think, would be amazing to reflect modern Australia, which is incredibly diverse.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I think I wanted to mention this context too. Actually, I'll ask you first, and I know this is part of the interview. If this is going out not immediately, maybe over the next few days or even weeks, I don't know when these interviews go out that we're doing with you.
In a few weeks.
Okay, good. Then I can mention what I'm going to tell you, because this is, the media release is coming out today. Breaking news. Media release is coming out today.
Yes.
So Perth Festival is making a commitment to a new biannual festival of literature and writing and storytelling and ideas, which is actually focused on the Indian Ocean rim. So it's including all those countries.
Oh my gosh.
Indonesia.
Oh my gosh.
India, and it's going to be huge.
I have got shivers. That is amazing. Wow. I love that. I love being part of the bigger world, because I went to Ubud Literature Festival and I absolutely loved it. It was so beautiful. So is that starting in 2025?
2026.
Wow.
It's going to take a long time it's only just reached agreement with their board, and the government's looked at it and they've thought this is amazing because they can see it from a trade perspective as well, and all those kinds of benefits that accrue when you make these kinds of creative engagements.
Soft power.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it would be Australia, and what other countries? Do you know?
Well, I'm
India.
riffing at the moment because I don't even know all the details. But I would assume anything that you would classify as the Indian Ocean rim, so that probably even includes the coast of South Africa as well, I'm guessing.
Wow.
We go right across to Indonesia. I think we'd take in India. We would take in other parts of Asia. So it'll be pretty amazing. Yeah.
Because I do love the Oz Asia Festival, and I was invited with my first book on Myanmar. They invited me to go and I was just over the moon, but then COVID struck. But that's Oz in Asia in Adelaide is wonderful.
Oh, wow.
Oz Asia Festival. So, but this would be really, truly a regional event. That's so exciting. I'll see you there in 2026.
Oh, look forward to it. Yeah, so keep your eyes open. As I say, at the time of recording this interview, the media release is just about to come
Still
out.
under embargo.
Still under embargo. And I actually, the reason I know about it at all is because I asked Writing WA to provide a quote for the media release. So you'll see our name in there. I'll forward it to you as soon as I get it.
That's just, this is really exciting. I think it's an exciting time to be a writer in Australia, to be an author. The pathways to publishing so much easier than they used to be. And what I was going to say as well is the sort of open communication and transparency you have is quite a contrast to the kind of almost mythical status of big all publishing houses, where just you want to get in, but you can't, and you don't know the pathways, and it's very difficult. And I really like the approach that is just essentially, which is what I want to do, create more authors. People
absolutely
have enrich lives through their writing, and not just write one book, but go back and keep writing more and more with the certainty that they can publish their books. There's not going to be any upset over whether they can publish their books. That's what Hembury Books does.
Oh, look, 100%. I was going to say, independent publishers like yourself, but also we've got some wonderful similar publishers over here in Western Australia, and we work quite closely with them. We also, for our writers, we host book launches here at the library.
I saw that on Instagram. Yeah. Okay.
So we think that's something we can do for our members, because a lot of them just don't have the money to pay for the venues, and we provide the tea and coffee. I do the introductions, so we just do everything for them.
Yeah.
And probably 90% of them are independently or self-published authors. So that's the important point here. To be able to support them is just fantastic.
Because they are funding every event that their book does. And I know, one of the big reasons I launched my book at Better Read Than Dead, they don't charge room hire, which is just terrific.
Yes, wow. Amazing.
It's between, having a wonderful and also profitable night, which you should on your launch, or spending more money after you've already spent a lot of money and time getting your book out into the world. So yeah, I think that's wonderful. It was, I saw it's a beautiful place. I love state libraries. Why did you transition from journalism?
Oh, okay, that's a really good question. And to be honest, I haven't completely escaped because I'm still a freelancer for the West Australian.
Me too. I'm still interviewing,
There you go.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to keep your hand in, particularly if you're still working in the writing sector. You have to be able to say to people, I'm a journalist as well. I'm an author as well. Not really, I used to be, or I didn't like it anymore, because I don't think that's a very positive, message. Very important to be a practitioner. So, but why did I move away from it as a full-time career? I think, to be honest, it was over 15 years on the staff of the West Australian, but before that, I'd been contributing for another 5 years to the West as a freelancer, and then in London for a while too, contributing to other. So look, you could probably say 20, 25 years in total. I guess I just felt like a change.
Yeah.
I felt like something different. And you know what it's like. You start to you feel like you're a little bit in a rush, a little bit, you're still enjoying it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the day-to-day grind of going to the office and having to do some things you don't really want to do because you've got no choice until you become a freelancer again. I decided to think, no, there's probably something else I've got to offer here.
Yeah.
Also, I'm the sort of person that likes to be creative, that likes to contribute. And if you're a staff writer, you are often under instruction. You don't have the independence that you have as like yourself now. Like if you're in charge of something, it's fantastic. You just suddenly you think, wow, I can start to implement all those great ideas I had over the years.
Yeah.
And that's really what I wanted to do. So when this opportunity came up, I just grabbed it.
Yeah, I can completely understand. I don't really know what it's like to be on staff because I never really stayed. I did work experience in London. I had like a 16-month stint at the Myanmar Times and I got fired. So I'm just a freelancer all the way. The
you're lucky.
politics and stuff, stay weeks, was really like but then there's the insecurity of freelancing, the needing to always say yes to work because you certainly want the person to keep giving you work, but not having the control over the volume. That for me became too stressful. I've got 2 little kids, so
yeah,
I went and started a business.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
But I think over the long term, I do feel that I'm far more. I thought I was autonomous, which is funny, but I wasn't autonomous really. Not like, but then I was more autonomous than a staff worker. You've said already that at book launches you're seeing a lot of indie authors. What about more generally, what are you seeing? How's the landscape looking in Western Australia in terms of the indie trad split with your courses and all those kinds of things?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. At the moment, we're running an emerging writers program, and we selected 20 people who had a manuscript in some stage development, and we wanted to work further with them to get them to the point where they can submit their manuscript to a traditional publisher. Okay, because a lot of people still feel that is the path for them in terms of getting established. There's that big question, as you'll know, around distribution, which always plagues a lot of indie authors. And publishing houses still have that huge network. And there are lots of factors involved, but I think it's shifted so much, as it probably has everywhere else in the world, to the point where independent publishing is not seen as the poor cousin anymore.
No.
It's definitely seen as a viable alternative route, particularly for people who are just frustrated. Their work is just as good as anyone else's, but for whatever reason, They're finding closed doors. And also, it's not happening fast enough. You know how long it takes. It can take at least 2 years in some cases from the time your manuscript's accepted to publication day. That's a long time.
For my editor, Jessica, it was 4 years.
Oh my God. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And in today's fast-paced world, you know, where you can publish instantaneously online, a lot of people don't want to accept that.
Yeah, and the book, there's a risk that with a memoir, I guess that's more timeless, but with nonfiction, you know, sort of a business, self-help, spiritual, you want to get it out there. The message, by the time your book comes out, you may feel differently, and you need to be actively promoting your book and still have that passion. So yeah, it is. So do you find that the ecosystem and stuff, and are you seeing lots of kind of new businesses like mine sprout up around like indie support services, different parts of the book production process?
Oh, look, absolutely, all the time. And we work with a lot of them. We're seeing, you know, smaller, what you would call hybrid publishers coming through. And some of these guys are so good because obviously there are certain outfits which are really cowboy outfits and you have to avoid them like the plague. But the people we work with are so open and transparent, and they tell you exactly what you're getting and how much of a commitment you have to make. It's just fantastic. They're such good people.
Can we give a shout out to the great ones in Western Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dragonfire Publishing is one.
Okay.
And Book Reality / Leschenault Press is another. That's Ian Hooper.
Okay.
Ex-British intelligence service.
No way.
Got into publishing. He's an amazing guy, and he's just doing so much for the independent scene over here. He's establishing, you know, like mini festivals both here and in the UK.
Amazing. Love it.
Yeah. So particularly those two guys in particular.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting. What do you think explains the continued high interest in memoir writing?
Look, I really feel that everyone has got a story to tell. That is never the problem. It's how to tell it, and it's all about confidence as well. There are so many people that hide their stories. You know, I know a lot of other people who are ghostwriters as well. They offer services where they help people tell their stories. And the other thing too is that when people want to write a memoir, it's often not about publication. They want to leave something for their families, don't they? And if they're going to write this and they might publish a limited, you know, print run, it is just for their family and friends. I think they feel like they want to leave something of themselves behind. They want to share whatever knowledge and wisdom they've accrued. So obviously we're talking about older people here. There's so many people when they retire, they turn their minds to writing their memoir, their life story. Yeah. And it is massive. It is probably the single most popular genre, you know, certainly over here, and I'm sure over where you are as well, across the board. So particularly with people who don't consider themselves writers, but want to write. And I love that because that's all a part of the ecosystem. And those people are often the best readers as well of the more traditionally published works.
Yeah, it's a really human thing, this desire that we want to share our story with someone outside of ourselves. It's really, and it's a really, it does take a lot of courage, I think, as well. But that, you know, it's so interesting. I'm sure, you know, this has been around for thousands of years, the desire to like tell our own personal stories. It's that are true. We can make anything up, but, you know, for me, do you have a preference for nonfiction with your journalism background?
Sorry, in what way?
Well, I exclusively read nonfiction.
I see my reading tastes.
Yeah. Are you do you love multiple genres?
Look, I mean, I guess given my job, it's almost an obligation that I have to read quite widely.
Yeah.
But if I separate that out from what I personally prefer, I actually love essays. I love long form essays, essay collections. Okay. That is my favorite form because it gives you, it's nonfiction, but it also gives you the flexibility to be very creative. So, yes.
Do you mean like 8,000 words, 10,000 words type?
Yeah. Basically, if something you might read in the New Yorker, or
Yeah.
I subscribe to the London Review of Books as well. So it's very long form. A lot of the stuff on Substack coming through now is very, very long. And then of course, there are books, like whether they're collections of essays or what could be considered one long essay. And what makes that different from nonfiction, proper, is that feeling of creativity and flexibility, and the quality of that it is literature as well. The language is as important as the facts.
Yeah, sure. So that reinforces my theory that we write what we love to read. And that brings us to the micro. And this is the first in our emails. That was the first time I heard micro memoir. What is a micro memoir? It's a great term.
Okay. This is such a great, so this is going in the opposite scale, isn't it? We've been talking about long form. This is very much short form. Excuse me. It really grew out of Night Parrot Press, is one of our small independent publishing houses over here. They have been working mainly in the flash fiction space. So every year they've been bringing out collections of very, very short fiction works.
How short?
Well, anything from 100 to 700 words.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's been enormously successful. And we've had people like former ABC journalist Gillian O'Shaughnessy, who recently retired from journalism. She's been doing some incredible work in this space as well, writing these amazing, works of very, very short fiction. And so it would have been last year, beginning of last year, I guess, because the collection came out later on in the year. It was the guys at Night Parrot Press wanted to translate this kind of experience to nonfiction, to memoir. And so they came up with the idea of their first short memoir collection, hence the term micro memoir. So it's like flash fiction. You've got the alliteration happening in the same way.
Wow.
And they put,
micro memoir fiction, cool.
Yeah, and you know what? You'll love this. It was the single most successful in terms of the submissions they got out of any of their other publications. I think they had, oh my goodness, probably well over 1,000. I think so. But it was huge submissions.
What did you?
I was very lucky to get in.
We were to be in that hunt. So wow, yeah, it's 100, but that's actually the tip of the iceberg. What did you write about, and how many words was it?
Yeah, look, I kept it to about 600, which is amazing. But that's when my journalistic skills kick in.
I am nice and tight. Word counts. People always talk to me in page numbers, and I'm like, "What's the word count?" Words as a micro memoir. Wow.
Yeah. So really, as you can imagine, these are just snapshots, aren't they? You can't tell a whole story. You really take episodes. So as you know, mine is called Holy Family, and that's because I was raised as a Catholic in a Catholic family. So church was very much a part of our experience. And in fact, I was an altar boy growing up. Yes. And this was in York in Western Australia, which is a small rural town about 100 k's east of Perth. And it's very much in the wheat belt. So sheep and wheat. And my father was a shearer. So I wanted to write about the experience of working in shearing sheds, the experience of growing up in a mixed family, because my mother was Samoan and my father was of Scottish descent. So how that worked in a small town in the 70s, where things were a little bit different than they are now. But also making parallels between, that's why it's called Holy Family. It's slightly ironic because I've got a lot of imagery in there, particularly with the shearing shed and the lambs. And so we think about the Lamb of God and so forth. So for anyone who is Christian or has been Christian or understands, those stories, will see all the connections in the story because they're not overt. So someone can read it and just enjoy it as a straight family memoir. And I think the key for me was the irony comes in as much as my mother always denied her Samoan heritage. She was ashamed of it. She deliberately hid it. Completely different from today, where people celebrate it, their origins.
Yeah.
So that's really what I wanted to deal with. And that probably sounds like a lot of things going on in 600 words, but I think I managed to make it work. At least I convinced the editors anyway.
Well, you certainly did, and you had amazing material. So what's the difference between a micro memoir and a short story?
Okay, well, I guess a short story you would think is fictional to start with.
Okay, true.
Yeah. But that bearing that in mind, you writing these micro memoirs, you would put an enormous amount of fictional techniques. I wrote it, for example, in the voice of my teenage self.
Mm.
So that was the narrator, not me today. So you're right there in the space, and that obviously requires a little bit more creativity.
Yeah.
So bringing those short story techniques into this micro memoir space was one of the jobs that I think everyone had to contend with, to make it work as a narrative and to give it a cohesiveness and make it feel like it's not just this isolated snapshot,
What a
floating in the ocean.
intellectual exercise that must have been.
Look, it was.
Creativity needs a constraint, right? Otherwise, it's analysis paralysis. So it's when you give it use only yellow and black, or so, as to quote one of my author clients, Craig Calder, in his book The Problem Hunter, he talks about the importance of that. So it's top of mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. What do you think about some book competitions, not naming any, but I know that there's one in particular that comes up again and again that people feel so disappointed that they can't enter because it's so prestigious, but it's closed to indie authors?
I think that's absurd. I mean, our awards over here are certainly not.
Yeah. The time is past for that sort of division, don't you think? That it is no reflection of quality or a great topic or anything to deny.
You're absolutely right. And what concerns me with that attitude is the fact that if you look at traditional publishing, so many books are still published that they're not all that great. To be traditionally published is no guarantee of quality whatsoever. So it's absurd to think in those terms, that just because something's independently published, it's going to be somehow inferior or less than a traditionally published book. And I also think that you need to represent the diversity of the publishing sector as well. If you are, offering, in some cases, pretty big money.
Yes.
In other cases, it's run by the government as well. So you are representing the taxpayer.
That's true.
You're representing the people. You should be actually committing to that breadth of, you're basically your stakeholders. And you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. I just think there is no difference in quality today. You're just as likely to find good and bad books
on
in
either
both
side.
spheres.
Yeah. Someone told me the other day, who's traditionally published and very successful, that she has said to her publisher, floated the idea of self-publishing because they're not interested in her going to a different genre, and they've said literature festivals won't touch you if you self-publish. Do you think the division is alive and well in terms of the ecosystem that we have in Australia, that there's traditionals on one side of the room and indies on the other? Because to me, that's sad.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, it's still there. It's a bit like the class system. People think it's disappeared, but it hasn't. And I think we've made some inroads, though. I do feel there is a shift for the reasons we've already cited in terms of how independent publishing is viewed. And I think a lot of traditionally published authors are also finding that frustration and deciding to self-publish or go with an independent small publishing press because they might shift genre. There are other publishers not interested. They want to move things, on a bit. And of course, the converse is true too. A lot of books that have been traditionally self-published, the publishing houses have taken them on. And that's really interesting because some of the big publishing houses have got quite clever. They're basically thinking to themselves, this author can take all the risks by self-publishing.
Yeah.
And if it does well, we'll offer them a deal, which is, not great, but it's the way things work.
Business, isn't it? And the business model is such that they can't take a risk on something. They try to minimize their risk all the time. That's what I love about self-publishing, is that it's so important to the author to get it out, and their motivations are completely different from like the number of units it will sell. It's about self-expression and having an impact on someone who's going through something the same, and that thing of telling your story and that being cathartic. So
And also that idea of sharing the risk, isn't it? Like if they decide they're going to invest part or all of the funds necessary to see that book published, that's great. And I guess that's what I love about the hybrid model, where they'll sit down together and make that decision.
yeah, it's more so I mean, I'm a hybrid publisher, but I don't
Okay.
get any royalties at all.
Okay.
So I
Wow.
know that that's strictly, the definition would be you keep a small amount of royalties, but I just set clients up to be self-published, and we help build their book and everything, and they invest in those services, but there's no ongoing relationship that's financially locking us into each other. Because I just feel that the author should just keep all their royalties and all their intellectual property. How do you share intellectual property? To me, the author must own it. I'm a self-published author, and I don't want my hands tied in promoting my book, and I don't want to have to call someone and say, I need 100 copies because I'm going to speak at the Byron Writers Festival. It's my business. You know what I mean? So
I love that. Yeah, I think that's an amazing model. But as you would know, not all hybrid publishers operate in that way. There are varying, degrees.
Hardly any do, but I'm being stubborn and using the term hybrid because I think assisted publishing sounds like assisted dying. I'm not going I don't want to use that term. And hybrid, in the tech world, is whether it's a hybrid car or so many other things, it's a buzzword. There's positive connotations. And also because the stigma of self-publishing is still there. There are, so I don't want to say I'm a self-publisher, which to me also how does that make sense? My clients are they're not self-publishing. We're doing it for them. So anyhow, there's a lot of different terminology, but that's what I'm going with. I call it author-centric publishing, which is not sketchy.
Yeah, no.
So to kind of sort of sum up everything we've been talking about, have you observed any changes in Australia's publishing landscape?
I think a lot of there are a lot of international publishers still operating in Australia that have absorbed a lot of the smaller imprints and so forth. And that's continuing. I can't remember. I won't name any names, but the other week there was just another bit of news where
Simon & Schuster.
That's the one. Okay, well, so that's an ongoing process. I also think, though, that a lot of wonderful small independent publishers are popping up as well. In relatively recent times, we had one over here in Western Australia called Upswell, and that's Terry Ann White, who used to run the University of Western Australian Publishing House, and she decided she wanted to set up shop on her own because she had a very specific idea about the kinds of books she wanted to publish. And I think that's where, and I actually include hybrid or self-publishing, all those terms. I actually include those under the umbrella of independent publishing. I really love that.
Yeah.
Makes no distinction. And I think that's where they come into their own, don't they? Because they're able to be more boutique, more niche, and say, okay, these are the kinds of books we really want to focus on.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
We're nonfiction, just nonfiction.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And so you're not beholden to those old sort of those almost outdated models, I guess, whereby at the end of the day, you've just got to make money. And
it's a sausage
all that counts.
And you're trying to be everything to everyone, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think about the trend of, there's really only 4 big publishing houses left in the world, all these massive mergers and stuff? What do you think? That's a good thing for authors, a bad thing for authors and readers?
Yeah, look, I think, well, it depends on what you mean by good or bad. If you mean financially, artistically, on the whole, artistically, it's a bad thing, because I think a lack of diversity in any system, whether that's, we're talking about the natural environment, flora and fauna, if we're talking about business, talking about the arts, a lack of diversity in any sphere is very bad. It's bad news. And ultimately it becomes unsustainable. And it results in a flattening out of the offering. I have to say, in recent years, a lot of books that have been coming out that are actually not that great, they're pretty boring because they're so beholden.
Risk averse.
They're risk averse. That's the word. Thank you. So publishers are always looking at, okay, what's successful, what's worked before, a bit like Hollywood. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Or they're so beholden to the current political and ideologically, correct ways of thinking
Yeah.
that if they don't write something that, takes into account all of that, they won't get published.
Yes,
And
so
that results in a terrible book. It really does.
so a specific example of that, Mary Garden, who wrote A Father's Suitcase, she published it independently, and it's about sibling abuse, really fascinating.
Right.
She went to another author's launch, a friend of hers, and the author said to the audience she had an Indigenous character and her publishers made her remove it because they were worried that she could be cancelled. I told that story to someone else and they said, it's common. But that is so sad that that's the state of affairs. I just think it's inherently at odds. Like, good literature is risky. Ideas are risky, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah. I'm amazed by the books that people publish. Like, it's really brave and amazing, and coming into contact with these people is just so interesting. Like, it's so wonderful.
It is.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say something on working with, Indigenous, First Nations, Aboriginal people. I work very closely with a particular family over here, the Kickett family, particularly Dr. Marion Kickett, who's a Balladong Noongar woman. So that's the area around York. And she and I have a very good relationship. I'm actually assisting her with a lot of books she's bringing out, telling Aboriginal stories and so forth. And it's always been very clear to me, because she's worked with other non-Aboriginal people, if you want to include an Aboriginal character or something, and you feel, a bit risky, whatever, just ask. Just go to an elder and say, you okay with this? 99.9% they say, yeah, fine, whatever. And I think that's just being respectful,
Yeah.
So that's always a good policy from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. No, that's really good. And what is the name of those books that you're bringing out, that you're working on?
Yeah, okay. So the new one, which will be coming out in time for the York Regional Writers Weekend in May of next year, is called What is an Aboriginal Elder?
Wow.
So they are interviews with Aboriginal elders from around the state. So basically, Marion has been conducting those interviews herself, and then I'm doing all the editing and so forth and putting the book together. Well, actually, Ian, our good friend Ian Hooper, from Book Reality, Not Press, is publishing it for us.
Fantastic.
And he, for his part, he offers all his services free of charge. That's his contribution. All he charges us are the printing costs.
Amazing.
So it's a real, genuine community project.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, to final question, people who are outside Western Australia, if they jump on the website, they can do an online course or something, can't they? It's open to anyone who's interested.
Oh, 100%. We'd love to start getting people, from overseas, because it's always, the converse is always happening. I know lots of people and my friends over here that say, I did this great course at, Writing New South Wales or something. They are always jumping online. So we would like to see some action the other way.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, so people jump on the Writing WA website and check out the courses. All right.
Absolutely. writingwa.org. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Will. It was really nice.
Thank you, Jessica.